punishes perceived enemies. His latest example, in court documents filed this month, Trump administration officials acknowledged canceling federal clean energy grants to Democrat-leaning states solely for political reasons. Last fall, the Department of Energy decided to review a big list of federal grants that had been approved under the Biden administration. The goal was to see which ones they could cancel. Their final list included over 600 grants awarded in both Democratic and Republican-leaning states. But when the list got to the desk of Russell Vought, the lead author of Project 2025 and the head of Trump's Office of Management and Budget, about half the grants were canceled. California researchers sued, saying that the grants were canceled for political reasons. And in a new court filing in that case, a lawyer for the Department of Energy seems to have admitted just that. Quote, with one exception, the 284 terminated grants went to states that awarded electoral votes to Kamala Harris in the 2024 election and with 2 Democratic caucusing senators. He went on to acknowledge the decision to cancel the grants in question had nothing to do with, quote, any programmatic, statutory, cost reduction, or performance-based factor. The New York Times reports that, quote, in contrast, the administration left untouched hundreds of additional energy grants in states that were represented by Republicans and had backed Mr. Trump in the last election, even though the Energy Department had recommended canceling them. Just last month, during congressional testimony, Trump's energy secretary strongly denied that the cancellations were political. Following the revelations in the court filing, however, the White House did not respond to the Times' request for comment. Joining me now is the former governor of Washington, Jay Inslee. Governor, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Let's play a quick exchange that took place between the energy secretary and the Congressman Gabe Amo of Rhode Island during testimony last month.
Secretary Wright, my question is simple. When will you restore the funding for all the projects that were wrongfully terminated?
So, number one, you even read the document or misinterpreted the document. We did not involve politics in the decision-making of our review process. Hands down, no decisions were made on politics. I keep hearing that charge. It's bullshit. We're going to say it a million times.
Mr. Secretary,
it's not true.
All right. So the Department of Energy spokesman told the New York Times that Secretary Wright is saying the initial list of grants was made without considering politics. That's actually different from what ended up happening, which is where Russell Vought and the OMB decided to cancel 284 of those grants. Pretty hard to not think it's about politics when you do the math on these, and they were all sort of in Democratic states.
What an amazing coincidence.
Yeah.
Just an amazing coincidence. Look, this filing, which is by a lawyer, and you got an obligation when you file a document, was a clear, unambiguous, 100% confession, a confession by Donald Trump that he is rewarding his, followers, and he is punishing those who have the temerity to not be subservient to him. And of all the multiple train of outrages by him, I think this may be in the top 5. And the reason is, essentially, he's saying that 100% of Americans should pay taxes, but only 50% get the benefit of the taxes they've paid. Because he basically has cut off the benefit of these clean energy grants to any of the states that essentially did not take the knee to him. So this has got to be one of the most unconstitutional, abusive, immoral, unethical abuses by this man, and there have been many.
Yeah, but it's a little tricky because when you're dealing with things having to do with energy and climate, they have national implications. So this concept of punishing one state but not punishing the state next to you, these things don't work effectively that way, in addition to being communal punishment, because there are people in those states who would have voted Republican and some who would have voted Democrat, in addition to the fact that this is taxpayer money that's being distributed in a way that's supposed to benefit all of citizenry. Like, there's so much wrong with this, it's hard to put your finger on what the actual problem is.
Well, what you pointed out, that, he is punishing some of the people who voted for him too, right? So when he denies the clean energy grants that are designed to reduce the electrical prices, there's grants in here that would help restore our grid that can keep electrical prices down instead of them going up as they have with gas and electricity prices under his administration. It's hurting people who actually voted for him. There are people of my state certainly voted for him, and he's denying them the benefit of the tax money that they sent to Washington, D.C. Now, maybe, I guess you could be happy that he recognizes the value of these clean energy projects because he's given them to the states that supported him politically. But you just can't have a nation where a guy takes the oath of office to the president of the United States and says, on this Bible or whatever he swears on, even if he holds it upside down, I'm only going to work for half of the American people, those who are subservient to me. That is unacceptable, and we really need people to stand up and be counted against this. Look, we need some Republicans to show just a tiny little bit of courage here and stop this abuse. We can't have a situation where the next Democratic president says, I'm not going to help the states that don't vote for him.
Yes, this is just wrong.
Collapse of democracy.
Yeah, this is not an us versus them thing. But you, of course, experienced this. When wildfires struck Washington in 2020 when you were governor, Donald Trump actually refused to act on your request for federal aid. You had to wait till Joe Biden took office to get the help your state needed.
Well, it's bad enough that he refuses to address climate change. It's terrible when he refuses to help electrical and gas prices down. In fact, he increases them. But it's worse than when you have families standing in the ashes of their homes. And I, as governor, who wanted to help them, couldn't get the federal resources to help those families. And I take this, Ali, really personally, because, I was there watching these people hugging each other in their most anxious, fear-laden points of their lives when their houses burned down. And to have a president to tell them to go fish because they won't be subservient to it is absolutely maddening. And that is continuing. He's continuing that abusive behavior as well. So people ought to get up in arms on it. It's a good reason to vote this November, as a matter of fact.
99 days from now.
President works for everybody.